Yo, have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome, everyone, to the L7C Podcast NBA Playoff Edition. Today, we are going to be reviewing the second round of the NBA Playoffs and previewing the conference finals. And we have the basketball aficionado with us, Mr. Evan Debo. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, Martin. I'm hopeful the lottery balls are in the Cleveland Cavaliers' favor here in about an hour and a half, and that we're well on our way to Cade Cunningham in a Cavs uniform, but probably highly unlikely. We'll see. How are you?
I'm good. Is Gilbert's kid going to be the one representing us? Because that usually brings the good favors.
Usually, all the bow tie swag and everything else. No, this was tonight is going to be GM Kobe Altman going to be present representing the Cavs.
Okay.
So he's going to fall on the sword one way or another.
All right, well, we'll see. And Evan's already alluded to that. That is at 8:30, right? 8:30 on ESPN.
Yeah, it'll be 8:30 and like 20 minutes of talking, and they'll be like, "All right, let's go." And they'll be like, "Oh God, I can't handle this." But likely, I think they actually draw like 2 hours before, and they've got a whole bunch of like fact checker verifiers to verify the numbers and the sequences and the formulas they run. So like, I think it's already ran now, but obviously the teams don't know. Nobody else other than like the league office knows who the winner is right now. So. This is a really deep draft, man. Like even if you go second, I mean, there's Jalen Green, there's Jonathan Kuminga, who I'm really high on. You name it. I mean, there's so many folks from that Ignite team, the college kids, but I mean, Cade Cunningham is the guy, 6'9" point guard, man.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be
seeing the guy, and hopefully he doesn't pass on wide open dunks like Ben Simmons.
Well, since you're already going there, let's go there.
Let's start to that series.
Let's just start to that series. And before we started recording, Evan, you gave this podcast a great name, the Own Up Podcast, because we were wrong.
Time to own up.
We were wrong about all of them. In this one, let's just start off with the Philadelphia 76ers, number 1 seed in the East, losing to the Atlanta Hawks, the number 5 seed in the East. In a best of 7, Atlanta won 4-3. Atlanta won 3 games in Philadelphia, game 1, game 5, and game 7, which is wild to think about. And you already alluded to passing up the open dunk. Besides Atlanta's magical run that they're going on, the biggest topic about the series was Mr. Benjamin Simmons. And Evan, I know that you've been sharing the crazy stats about Ben, so I'm gonna just pass this on to you, man.
Man, lots of question marks here. So, just in recap, this series went the distance. Yes, this is the Own Up Podcast. We were wrong about all these series. I'm glad I was wrong about a couple of these. Just injuries played a part in some of them, but in all honesty, injuries did not play a part in this one. The number 1 seed goes down. Atlanta upsets Philadelphia 4-3. They win game 7 in Philadelphia, 103-96. Trae Young, 29 points, 10.9 assists in the series. Dude shot putrid, but it was very Kobe-like mentality for Trae Young. Shout out Trae Young for, just again, like if you're looking at the stat sheet and you're Trae Young, you're like 8 for 22. You can't tell him any different. He's still going to sling. What's really, really great about Trae's game is just the how he sees the floor, like his assist game. People are been kind of jokingly throwing around, like here's some Steve Nash type looks from him. Like, I mean, that's more impressive. I mean, he can keep you honest. I mean, people try to make the Curry comparisons because he's small. He can launch it and make some from distance to keep you honest from that far out. But I mean, he doesn't make them obviously anywhere near the clip that he does. But I mean, that game 7 was the big guy who came through because, Atlanta, specifically for Atlanta had some issues here in terms of scoring the ball from some of their usual folks. Bogdan Bogdanovic played only 21 minutes. There's some talk about whether he was, maybe injured or something like that. 2 of 8 from the field. 2 of 8 from the field, only 4 points. But Kevin Huerter, man, like I saw some funny Rickroll gifs going around where it was just him balling on folks. Like 39 minutes, he was 10 of 18 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, poured in 27 points, grabbed 7 boards, dished out 3 assists. This was the Kevin Huerter takeover game for Game 7. So, Trae Young was 5 of 23, but passed out 10 assists in the win. But shifting the gear to, I mean, again, I just improbable. We did not see this coming from the Hawks. I mean, I will confidently say that the Milwaukee Bucks, barring injury, will beat Atlanta here in 5 or 6 games. I feel very confident about that. Again, I mean, just shout out to the Hawks. I mean, they gave the Sixers everything. A lot of questions about, Doc Rivers' record here. In terms of playoff series outside of the Boston Big Three in that first year in 2008, like what has he really done kind of since going back to the finals the next year? But I mean, really nothing since. So you've got that going on. The Ben Simmons thing is telling. I mean, his career by all accounts is done. He's been dogged like a player I haven't seen dogged in forever. You mentioned again some of the stats that we were talking about. They were just telling across the series. Across the series in the fourth quarter for Ben Simmons. Game 1, he took 2 shots, he made 2 shots. Game 2, took 0 shots. Game 3, he took a shot and made a shot. From game 4 through game 7 in the fourth, this is all in the fourth quarter. From game 4 through 7 in the fourth quarter, he did not attempt a shot, Benjamin Simmons, the highly touted 6 foot, essentially 6'10", 6 foot 11 point guard. Who can get to the one of these days, he's going to find the right system. He's going to find the right team. And, if you truly bid around him, he could be Giannis light. I mean, he really could. If you approach the game that way, of just have him attack the basket, use his physicality, everything else, you cannot not take a shot in the fourth quarter, the last 4 games of a series, and expect to win, especially when you're like one of the 2 main all-stars on the team. Martin, I mean, what so many things on Philadelphia's mind. Philadelphia's got to blow it up at this point. We thought about this a little bit last year. We talked about this a little bit last year. We were optimistic with the trade. Shout out the Seth Curry deal. Yeah. I mean, that was huge. Can you imagine if they didn't have him in this series? Like, I mean, it's just now's the time. Ben Simmons has got to go somewhere. It can't be here. And whether it's picks and, I don't know what, but they need to do some maneuvering because it's done. You just continue to try to build around Joel, keep him healthy as much as you can. I mean, it's done here. Goose is cooked.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I know when we talked about at the beginning of the year, I was a little more tougher on Embiid, and you were right when you listened to Simmons' podcast about that Embiid's going to be coming this year, and which he did. And if he was fully healthy the whole year, he probably could have won league MVP. He was not playing healthy this series at all, and this man was giving it 110, yes. And he was dominating. And the Ben Simmons thing, it's truly embarrassing. I know when LeBron first went to Miami, and you remember the fourth quarters he was having against Dallas, and he was getting torn to shreds about that. And I think this is significantly worse because at least LeBron would put up some shots. It's just they weren't going in. But Ben was not putting up any shots. And I felt like that's just, you're the second best player on the team. And you got to be aggressive, man. Even if you're just driving to kick out for a wide open 3 or go for a layup. Like you said, the dude is 6'10". And to not go for a shot and to have Steph Curry be their second best offensive weapon, and you're paying Ben Simmons that much money, yeah, it's you can't have that anymore. And I think they do have to move him. I know some people have been trying to just name random teams, like trying to trade him for like CJ McCollum or Bradley Beal or send him to LA, which
Colin Sexton.
Yeah, which they have nothing there, or they have nothing to give. But it was bad, man, because maybe because I was just so impressed with Joel Embiid this series that I wanted them to win this. But the Ben Simmons thing, this is something that you can't erase from your resume. And in the press conference, it sounded like he was nonchalant about it, about like, oh, like, why didn't you shoot? Why'd you pass on a wide open dunk that would have tied the game? Once he did that, the series was over. And I know people now are coming out with stuff. They're getting reports about Ben Simmons doesn't work hard. Ben Simmons gets coddled, blah, blah. We don't know that because we're not in the locker rooms, but he's got to go. And like, I can go on a huge rant about him because everyone knows I rant about the Clippers, but at least the person on the Clippers has showed up their last series, so I can't say anything about him. But Ben Simmons, that was all-time bad. Like, that was really bad. Can't shoot. Like, he can't shoot, and he doesn't want to shoot. And you can't do that as a starting point guard for a championship contender team.
No. I mean, again, we talked last podcast or a couple podcasts ago about, sometimes with some of these teams, it's about shuffling the dice a little bit. Like there's a lot of teams out there with number 2 stars that like you can just swap and see, is the fit better? I mean, Ben Simmons is a good player. He's way better than what he showed in this series. Like,
oh yeah,
he's absolutely getting dog bad. I mean, he was afraid to get fouled and go to the line. I mean, this was a NBA playoff record-setting pace for the lowest free throw percentage from anybody who got to the line as many times as he did. That's why he passed the ball to Matisse Thybulle, who was like, "What the heck are you doing? Like, you got a wide open dunk." Like, he was afraid that he would get fouled and he'd miss the shot, or he wouldn't make the basket and he'd have to shoot 2 free throws. I mean, that was what it was. What was also, Jeremy Young and I talked about this a lot too. What was also just mind-boggling from a scheme element from Doc Rivers' standpoint, why aren't in Milwaukee's absolutely going to do this? Why didn't Philadelphia attack and Trae Young in pick and rolls and get him in favorable switches? I mean, at the end of the day, Ben Simmons barreling down on Trae Young to get him in foul trouble. Like, why is that not? This is middle school basketball. What are we doing? I mean, you could have had, whether it was Curry or whatever, get him in foul trouble. That's their main creator. I mean, again, they put all those shooters around Trae in Atlanta. And if you take the creator out of it, it makes it hard for those guys to get their own shot off. And you get a guy like that in foul trouble. That was the most telling part of the series. And again, yeah, like you said, Joel Embiid, dude just played like a monster. If he was healthy, he arguably could have been MVP this year. And he had huge point totals regardless. A lot of questions for Philadelphia. They've got to find a home for Ben at this point. Ben still has value. Everybody's just got recency bias on, oh, he sucks and whatever. He does not suck. He's arguably the best defender 1 through 4 in the NBA right now. He'll find a home and somebody will figure out how to make him Giannis essentially like that. That's his ceiling, I think. But we'll essentially see how that unfolds, here shortly. And part of that we'll find out as teams get draft picks tonight. Somebody's willing to give Philly a top 1, 2, 3, 4 pick for Ben Simmons and, maybe something else to make the money work. All those conversations really start tonight with the draft lottery. But Martin, we go from that series, Game 7, to let's go over to another series. Obviously, we did not get right, and I'm really glad that this one. And I said this last week. I'm really glad I was wrong about this one. The Milwaukee Bucks in overtime in a Game 7 just an absolute crazy ending. I was watching that downtown Columbus on Saturday night. Put away the mighty Brooklyn Nets. who, again, I was very confident Brooklyn was going to win the whole thing. And the injury bug showed itself. Harden was absolutely not himself. He couldn't get by people like he normally could. He couldn't get the separation with just how he was come back from his injury, probably forced a little bit too much. And then when Kyrie went down, it was really just KD going, the rest of the way. So, it was, and KD just balled out. This is the best dude in basketball right now, Martin. This is the best dude in basketball. This is a bad dude, a bad lethal scorer in the mid range, gets to the bucket whenever he wants. Easy money sniper was sniping. So that game 7, Milwaukee takes 115-111. Notably, to send it to overtime, in case you missed it, listeners, KD had a kind of almost like a 180, 360, whatever you want to call it, 360 degree, like no scope shot. But his toe was on the line by a couple inches. He would have won the game with a 3-pointer, so it ends up being a long 2, ties the game, sends it to overtime. Then Milwaukee ends up pulling it out there. But KD was gassed. He had nothing left. Giannis was gassed. He had nothing left. Martin, the Milwaukee Bucks overcome Giannis's free throw shooting woes throughout the series and continue again. They overcome some bad scheme stuff where he's still taking threes for whatever. And they get some injury luck here, as a couple other teams have gotten too. And they advance. What are your thoughts? I texted you, I think, game 3 or game 4, and said the winner of this series, if it ends up being Milwaukee, I felt confidently at the time it was going to be Brooklyn, is going to win the whole title. I still feel that way. I still feel Milwaukee is going to, barring injury, to take the injury thing off, which is not easy to take off because every team's been plagued by it almost. I feel like we're on our way here to a Milwaukee Bucks championship. Thoughts on really, really good game 7, phenomenal game 7, and this series?
Yeah, with game 7 as well. I saw it when I was with the group at Put-in Bay, and when it was funny, I was just posting stuff on Snap, and then I was just going around, and I actually got the full reaction of the whole bar when Kevin Durant made the shot to go into overtime. And just from a side note, being in that type of electric atmosphere again during getting on the other side of COVID was also a refreshing thing as well, seeing a bar go crazy for a sporting event. This series, man, it was wild because we've been on Brooklyn to win it if fully healthy the whole time. I know I made the snide comments that if Kyrie didn't want to come to work during the playoffs, they wouldn't win, but unfortunately he got hurt. And if he didn't get hurt and if Harden didn't get hurt, I think Brooklyn would have won. I know we said the max of this would have been like Brooklyn in 6, and they almost could have done that as well. But you've already alluded to Kevin Durant. If you didn't think he was back from his injury or top 1 or 2 player, that game 5 showed everything. The 49, the 17 rebounds. I don't have the full stats, but that game 5 was just so electric. And also the game 7 where he had 48, played the whole game, but Giannis had 40 as well. And I do think 2 people who are unsung heroes during this, and you've been high on him, Chris Middleton. That dude balled out when they needed him during this series. Game 3, he had 35. Game 6, he had 38. The guy, he was balling. And then the other unsung hero, because you were high on their moves in the offseason of getting PJ Tucker. Because you said before the season started, when you have a guy like PJ Tucker who comes off the bench, and sure, Durant was just otherworldly, but PJ Tucker was making him work for each of one of those points. So, man, you called those moves at the beginning of the year, and they really helped Milwaukee out. And I truly did enjoy this series besides the injuries because it came down to the very end in a game 7. And what can you ask for as a basketball fan? It was, besides the game 2 where me and you were like, this series might be over when Brooklyn beat them by almost 40. But it was great, man. And Brooklyn will be back next year when everyone is healthy. But this is a good thing for Milwaukee and another shot for Giannis because we've been hard on him that in the playoffs he doesn't get it done, especially with the free throws. But I'm excited, and you might be right because I'm starting to lean your way of the winner of that series potentially winning the title. But it was great as a basketball fan.
Yeah, they don't back to PJ Tucker. They don't win the series without PJ Tucker. And now like people are laughing like, yeah, PJ Tucker, he's a hard defender. He's up on KD's grill and KD's slinging him for 40 plus like multiple times, including 49 in the last game. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about that. But also, I mean, I'd argue almost that PJ was needed more this series offensively. Like, I mean, if you look in that final game, he had 11 points. And some of those guys that were huge in the last series for Milwaukee were not there. And there's been a lot of question marks, again, after this series that I feel like it's just overblown. That like, Milwaukee's, how far can Milwaukee's big three take them and Lopez take them, again, supporting cast? Because like the bench did not show up this series. I mean, like Bryn Forbes, who was, I mean, just a lethal gunslinger from three in the last series and in the first round, he only played 5 minutes and had 0 points in a game 7. Like there's something to be said there about what happened this series. I hope it was just kind of like a somewhat of a matchup thing. And again, their starters played heavy minutes. Giannis, Middleton, and Drew. And Drew, by all accounts, didn't have that great of a series, but he came through. He was like almost like an offer for much of game 7. He came through and like hit 3 straight shots in the fourth quarter when they absolutely needed him to. He had like a quick like 6-8 run, on his own kind of thing. But I mean, it was just super impressive. Chris Middleton in the series, 24 points, 8.7 boards, 4.3 assists for the series, along with 36% from 3. Giannis, 32 a game, 13 boards a game. And obviously the tough 25% from 3. He was making 1 for every 4 he was taking essentially, and struggled there and sub 50% at the line. So those things got improved. But I mean, again, for the series, you're looking at the bench that, Bobby Portis only averaged 3 points a game in the series. Jeff Teague only played in 2 games. They went to Thanasis can't spit it out. Antetokounmpo. Am I saying it right? No, I'm not. Giannis Antetokounmpo. Antetokounmpo?
Yeah, Antetokounmpo. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm struggling with that in this podcast. But anyway, so I mean, they went to him 7 games because they were needing it. But I mean, yeah, Bryn Forbes averaged less than 5 a game. Pat Connaughton less than 5 a game. Like they really struggled in that regard with some of those guys. But I like to think that's more of a just for whatever reason, fluke or just missed shots or what have heavy minutes by the starters where they didn't need those guys. But I expect them to come out against the Hawks starting tomorrow night, and just kind of lay it on. So let's shift over to the West Series.
There was one thing I wanted to say about PJ Tucker that you brought up about like the defense and like the people saying, well, KD was so slinging for 40 plus. I know that you understand this as a huge basketball fan as you are. There is that people casual don't understand. There is a difference between an easy 40 and an extremely hard 40. Like KD's 40, it wasn't like just 40 points on like 10 shots, like not getting like sometimes better offense beats better defense, but PJ Tucker was making them work. It wasn't like KD was just shooting wide open. So I do just want to preference that, but that was it. But as you said, let's swing it out to the West. Another series that we might as well go to them that I was completely wrong about was the Los Angeles Clippers over the Utah Jazz. Everyone knows that I'm not the biggest Clippers fan, and the Utah Jazz was 2 games blown out of the water, and then also Kawhi goes down in this series, and then the Clippers won 4 straight after being down 0-2, and they were down 0-2 in the playoffs, winning these series. And Paul George was averaging 29 points a game. I can't have to give him props. Before Kawhi went down, was averaging about 27, Red 18. We talked about early in the year who on the Clippers can get you 10-12, and they had Marcus Morris getting them over 10. Obviously, man, he had his. But Evan, what did you think about this and the number one overall seed going home to the Clippers and the Clippers making it to their first conference final?
Another series where the injury bug, affected things. I mean, as you mentioned, Utah was up 2-0, and Clippers proceed to win 4 straight, including that Game 6 just absurd blowout from Terrence Mann. Man, like that was almost. And watching him in Game 1 of the next series, as we'll get to Phoenix in a second, like he was a non-factor in that game. So like I think a lot of, speaking of Terrence Mann, like I think a lot about like. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope this is a budding guy that we're like, oh, we start to see seeds and he has a great regular season. And he starts becoming a diamond in the rough for them that can become an all-star. But like for whatever it was just a one game pop a shot or whatever. It was kind of like 4 or 5 years ago when Terrence Ross for the Raptors just went off for like 50 points. And you're like, who? Like a guy who averaged like under 5 points a game just dropped 50 one night on a Tuesday. Like that was Terrence Mann in this final game when they needed him, when Kawhi's knee is up in the air. I don't know what to think. I haven't read too much into that, but like I get strong vibes that Kawhi's like ACL could be seriously damaged, and they're just fighting, telling us the news almost. Like they know the writing's on the wall and they're like keeping it hush hush. But so I thought they were done in the water. Again, for a little bit when they got that news, and then they won Game 5, and then you get to Game 6 and they win Game 6. But again, on the injury side for Utah, Mitchell missed a game, but played. I mean, he was not himself. He averaged 35 for the series, man, but he was not himself by any means. And then obviously, again, Mike Conley, he really struggled last year when they brought him in, really struggled, but he was so incremental to why this team was, essentially the number one seed. So, but he only was able to play one game this series, and it really showed. I think that really hurts, guys like Ingles and Clarkson certainly contributed. Bogdanovich too had some good times in there as well. But I mean, I really think it was just really tough to overcome the Mike Conley thing. And I mean, shout out to the Clippers and Ty Lue for figuring it out. And I mean, again, Ty Lue is, he doesn't get enough praise. He got a lot of praise after this series finally. But I mean, whether it was with the Cavs or what have you, like guy figures out a way to win. I mean, he does. Like I can't remember what that stat was the other day about his record in like closeout games. It's phenomenal. I mean, he was, by all accounts, why they won the series was better coaching. He absolutely outcoached Utah in this series. So, yep, they move on. Again, we want these Clippers to get knocked off for different reasons or whatever. But Paul George showed up when he needed to show up this series. I mean, you gave him props all the way through in the group chat and everything else. And I mean, he performed. And again, everybody I think is going to remember the Terrence Mann game.
Yeah, and also with the Terrence Mann game, they're also going to remember if Rudy Gobert deserved that Defensive Player of the Year, because that defense against in Game 6, that was atrocious. That was bad. That was
really bad. I mean, he cooked him, man.
Yeah,
absolutely cooked him. They got him in kind of that high screen, action, pick and roll action. They were just beating him in the bucket every time. Like it was like they played him off the court. It was bad. I don't have like the defensive plus minus or whatever for the series. He was -4, and that's your Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, again, not a huge amount. So I mean, but man, that was bad. Yeah, I mean, again, just I don't know. I mean, for Utah, they've got a lot of promise. You wonder how much Mike Conley's got left in the tank. I still feel like they're a piece away, kind of like Denver was a piece away when they got Aaron Gordon, but then Jamal Murray went down. Very kind of similar boat, I'd say. But I mean, again, we're almost at the off-season time, and who knows, man? Who knows what could happen? So let's move over to my Western conference representative. There's a little preview action for you there, Martin. The Phoenix Suns, the number 2 seed.
Been on them all year.
Sweep. Get out the 1,000-count bristle broom. Get out all your cleaning supplies. They sweep the Denver Nuggets. 4 straight games. They take game 1, 122-105. They take game 2, 123-98. 116-102 in game 3, and 125-118 is the closest game of 7 points differential in the closeout game. Chris Paul was fantastic in this series. Absolutely fantastic. He missed the first game. He's going to be out the second game of the next series against Clippers. By all accounts, they call it COVID protocols without saying he's got COVID. Dude's got COVID or had COVID, so he's out. Again, one of those personal things. Again, you're like, man, like you couldn't got the vax. Come on, man. But again, it's to each their own on their decision to get that, I guess. But I mean, they haven't needed them. They swept them 4-0 and they're up 1-0 in the series against the Clippers right now. But Martin, takeaways from, again, Phoenix just keeps rolling with the punches. They keep winning. Very impressive. I mean, Jokic averaged 25, for the series. But I mean, these games weren't even close. I mean, again, Chris Paul, 25 and a half, 10.3 assists. Booker also with 25. Shout out. I mean, the supporting cast, Jay Crowder's really thrived kind of like he did with Miami last year, getting in the Eastern Conference. And we'll get him to the finals last year. He's always been, when he played for the Cavs, and I was watching him in Dallas and those kinds of things, coming to and in Boston, like very streaky shooter, physical defender, really good physical presence in terms of like setting screens and kind of getting that open pop stuff. He's been playing phenomenal. My all comeback team from, like, if there's a gif of the Undertaker coming up like right now for an NBA player, is Cameron Payne. That dude was the Cavs like 4-string point guard like 2 years ago. Was like, we picked him up off the scrap heap and was out of the league. This guy, I mean, is blown by Jokic and he comes in and he's been starting with he started this last game with Chris Paul out, I think. But dude just blown by people. He's got one gear. He's getting to the hoop. They can't stop him once he rounds a corner. I mean, he's resuscitated his career, and then some. He's playing phenomenal. And then, Bridges and Ayton, they're so well-rounded, Martin. I love this team. Mikal Bridges, two-way player, great defender, playing active hands in the passing lanes, gets out there in transition, putting defense to offense, attacking the bucket. He averaged 16 in that 4-game series. DeAndre Ayton's been phenomenal. Martin, the Phoenix Suns are going to the finals, I'm telling you.
We said this team can make the Western Conference Finals back when the season started. And like I'll say, we were the first to say it. And here we are. They're in the Western Conference Finals. So I'm happy we got that one right. And Chris Paul and when we did it back months ago, we talked about just the Chris Paul effect, because if you look at the stats, anywhere he goes, he changes that team into a winner. But we were not expecting Bridges to be what he was now. Ayton, especially Cameron Payne. I don't know if it's getting some leadership stuff from CP3 and CP3 taking him underneath his wing. Jay Crowder, we know what he's about, obviously. And like I said last podcast, the world is seeing what Devin Booker can do. I know a lot of people used to say his stats were empty stats when they were on a losing team and he was dropping 70, but they would only win like 15 games. But now people are seeing what he can do. Now people are calling him the next Kobe Bryant. I would wait till he won a title or so before we start saying stuff like that. But dude, I'm excited for this team. And Phoenix hasn't been in the Western Conference Finals since the Nash, Amari Stoudemire days. So it's been well over.
And they haven't. I don't believe they've been to the finals since, was it 94?
It'd be Barkley. Barkley's MVP.
93? Yeah, the Barkley team?
Yep, the Barkley team. So I'm excited for them. And with Denver too, me and you also said, like, if they were fully healthy, especially the way Michael Porter Jr. was playing, they had Jamal Murray, they could have been the champion. They could have won it all. It's just, again, they had that injury early, and they were just not prepared for Phoenix. And Jokic, he got his stats and all, but they weren't prepared. But I'm not really too worried about Denver because fully healthy.
It's just health, and that's just the theme of the playoffs. I mean, LeBron came out strong and was, I told y'all we were starting to start too quick. We finished too late. You name it. Like, I felt that was more frustration, and I feel bad for the 4 Lakers. Like, not to get on a tangent, but the poor Lakers trainer they fired, like they basically blamed AD's injury on, and maybe LeBron's thing, like, hey, LeBron's 18 years in the league, man, and AD don't exactly have a clean rap sheet when it comes to staying off the injury report. Like, it's this, don't fire your poor trainer lady and blame her on that. But like, I get the frustration, and I mean, you look across the league, there's a lot of major players out right now. I mean, major players. So that definitely played a factor. I mean, Denver doesn't have to do much, and they can certainly be back in it next year. Assuming Murray comes back healthy. Again, it's just health. And that's where you can have a year like this. Is as good as Phoenix is playing. Credit to them, but also, I mean, sometimes you benefit from injury. I mean, look at Golden State, their first year. When they went all the way to the title, they played a lot of teams that were injured on their way to getting the Cavs. And then the Cavs lose Kevin Love in that first series against the Celtics. Still hate Kelly Olynyk to this day. We'd have 2 titles. And then Kyrie in that game 1 overtime blows out his knee in the finals. And they've got sometimes just teams benefit from that, And that's, but again, shout out Phoenix. They move on to the Clippers series. Where they're up 1-0. So Chris Paul's in COVID protocols. He's not playing. There's a young guy, back to, again, the Kobe comparisons, which, again, he's got to win a couple titles before we even start to think about that. A guy who, has not gotten a necessarily good what I want to say. He's not gotten a good rep, I guess I should say, for, again, just being a kind of a garbage scorer on a bad team kind of thing. But 40-piece triple-double, 40 points, 13 boards, 11 assists. Phenomenal. Granted, the Clippers made a hard run back late in that game. And then guys like Bridges and Ayton, really, to kind of help squell defensively. And I mean, with some great roll action to the rim for dishing from Booker with some of those assists and stuff like they're able to pull it out. Paul George had 34. Reggie Jackson had 24. Reggie Jackson, again, another guy who's really resuscitated his career.
Yeah.
Our Terrence Mann, we wanted to see if it held over, went to another game. Dude only took 4 shots and had 9 points. But, I mean, he didn't miss a lot. He was shot 75% from the field, just didn't take a lot of shots in 27 minutes. But Rondo had like an 8-0 run himself in the fourth quarter, getting back into it really quick towards the end. But Phoenix takes that one. And they're getting ready to play again here about another hour and a half at 9:00 Eastern time. Martin, I mentioned a couple of times, I have Phoenix moving on. The Clippers are very capable. I know that I was saying that two series ago, but they're very capable. If Kawhi goes stone cold Steve Austin, comes through that door down the ramp like Backlash, like 2000, like they could get to the finals. I have to operate under the assumption at the recording of this podcast on June 22nd at 7:36 p.m. Eastern time that's not going to happen. So with that being said, I think Phoenix keeps on rolling, man. And they're back in the finals. I just looked up, first time since 93, third time overall as a franchise. Quick tangents. Shout out to 2016 Cleveland Cavalier NBA champion, multiple NBA champion. That's why they call him champ. He's your NBA Executive of the Year, James Jones, for the team that he's put together here, signing or acquiring by trade Chris Paul. Some of the folks that he's helped with the development side of things, pulling Cameron Payne out of there. Torian Craig, I think, was a signing this past year too. Getting Jay Crowder, like he's deserved every bit of that. Great locker room guy, great culture guy. I'm really excited for Phoenix here and where they're going. So I'll pick them in, I'll say 6 games, because again, Ty Lue is a very crafty guy. It could go 7 here. I don't know, but I mean, Phoenix is on a roll, man. They've won 5 straight. until you show me something different with them specifically. Clippers are capable. They were down 2-0, came back. They were down 2-0, came back. I like Phoenix.
I agree. I mean, I'm not going to pick the Clippers. I'm going to pick Phoenix as well. I'm actually going to pick Phoenix in 7 just to give the respect to the Clippers because they've been so resilient, being down 0-2 twice and then winning in 7 and 6. So I feel like if they do go down 0-2 today, they're not going to back down. And I feel like this is going to go the distance and it's going to be another great series. Obviously, we don't know when CP3 is coming back from COVID protocols. And we don't know if the Kawhi injuries is more serious than they're leading on. Like you said, potentially like a serious ACL injury. They just don't want to just say it out loud and get it over with. Or if it's something that he could come back from. But right now, whenever CP3 comes back, I feel like Phoenix will get their stride. And CP3 and Devin Booker and the boys will be in the NBA Finals representing the West. But now, Evan, I think you alluded to who you have in the East. They have not started yet. We have Milwaukee and Atlanta. And I think it's Giannis's time. I think Atlanta's run has been magical, to say the least. But I just don't see how they're going to deal with Milwaukee's weapons. I feel like they're way too deep offensively and defensively. And I'm taking Milwaukee in 6 games against the Hawks. How about you?
I might get a little ahead of myself and say Milwaukee in 5.
Okay.
Atlanta's capable with their shooting. I wonder if Trey were to ever get in foul trouble, this would be the series I think he'd get into foul trouble. I mean, you can hunt him. If there's a team for that guy, I mean, you can hide you. And shout out to Atlanta. I mean, as much as I want to dog Doc Rivers for not seeking out switches at a certain point too, I'd like to think that Doc Rivers isn't an idiot. That Atlanta is just really good at recovering and finding ways to like get the switch back or double out of somebody's hands so Trey isn't isolated against somebody with just how bad a defender he is. But I mean, against Milwaukee, you've got Giannis, you've got Middleton, you've got Holiday, you've got Lopez in the starting lineup. You add in PJ Tucker. All those dudes can bully that guy down on a block on a switch. 3 of the 5 can take him off the dribble like that. And it goes both ways too. So I mean, like Atlanta can get creative with some of their bigger wings. Obviously, they lost RJ Hunter, Danilo Gallinari. I mean, Kevin Huerter. I mean, they've got some length there to help with, and that's the beauty of how they've constructed that team and how Nate McMillan's getting them to play defense now. Especially since they canned Lloyd Pierce halfway through the season. I mean, they just, again, we've talked about this ad nauseum, just how good a job that Nate McMillan, veteran coach, has done. Just absolutely phenomenal work. But I like them in 5 going to the finals. And as of today, I've got Phoenix and Milwaukee in the finals. And I'm excited for both teams at the prospect of that. I think the Clippers and Hawks are capable. I think if you ask me to rank the 4 teams in order, just in terms of just who they got left, injury wise and potential matchups, I'm going Bucks, Phoenix, Clippers, and I got to put Hawks last. But I mean, at a certain point when you get to this landscape in the playoff bracket, like, you got to be capable of surprising some folks. And the Hawks keep surprising people, so maybe we'll be surprised again.
I do want to say something about Atlanta, though, because obviously these two will always be linked together, Trae Young and Luka Doncic.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up.
And this is their 3rd year, and Trae Young has his team in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think it's going to be one of those few trades that nobody loses. Because obviously we see how good Luka is over there. I mean, preseason, we had him as one of our top 2 MVP candidates. And what Trae is doing over here, obviously, with Nate McMillan coming, like this team, they surrounded him. Like, I think that trade worked out perfectly for both teams. Now, if Trae somehow wins the title this year with Atlanta in his 3rd year at 22 years old, then people are going to be looking at Luka like, hey, you got to catch up. But so far, I don't think any of them have lost that trade. They both came out good on the other side.
Yeah, Trey gets dogged way too much for that trade, and I mean they're both really unique players. And I kind of alluded to this earlier. Like, don't judge Trae Young on his ability to be an efficient scorer. Judge Trae Young on his playmaking ability. And if you look at it like that, Trae Young, like I've heard a couple people today on the radio say, if you look at Trae Young is like maybe a budding Steve Nash with deeper range.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary, man. Steve Nash is 2-time MVP. Like, it's nothing to sneeze at. Luka could well end up being a LeBron type player again, with the triple doubles, the scoring, the step backs, you name it. Like, they're both so good. Don't let the individual efforts of one hurt the team efforts of this. And again, we're all caught up in the moment. Like, if Trae Young gets bounced in this series and struggles the next couple years, like, we might be saying, yeah, it was obvious, like, hey, that was a cool run. There were a lot of injuries, what have you. But again, you're right. I mean, they're both, you got to both look at them in a vacuum kind of thing,
Agreed.
So,
Agreed.
I mean, it's just a really good run by Trae right now. And again, they could surprise us. Martin, I want to shift gears real quick before the lottery starts here, top of the hour. We got a number of head coaching vacancies. So we've got Portland, who is replacing Terry Stotts. Number of guys who have been rumored to be in the finalists in that coaching search. Notably Becky Hammon, longtime Spurs assistant, would be first female head coach in NBA history. She's filled in several times for Pop when he's been ejected or he's been ill or something like that. She would be a phenomenal hire. Chauncey Billups has been linked to that job as well. Previously Jason Kidd had withdrawn his name as somebody potentially interested in there. Outside of that job, we've got openings with the Washington Wizards, the Boston Celtics, Scott Brooks just recently with the Washington Wizards. Stan Van Gundy with the New Orleans Pelicans is out. Nate Bjorkgren with Indiana is out. Tons of vacancies open now. I would not be surprised if a Scott Brooks, definitely not Stan Van Gundy. He's done. This was his. Somebody got the bright idea. Honestly, everybody was so high on Griff, the maestro of the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers team that fired our head coach David Blatt halfway through January with the number 1 seed in the East to hire Ty Lue. And again, that season was a miracle. Like, there's a reason why there's a autographed team basketball that I paid way too much money for sitting on my mantle over here. I meant to send you guys a picture of that because we just had the 5-year anniversary of the 2016 finals winning Game 7 the other day. But there's a reason why he'll always be special to Cleveland, but his tenure in New Orleans has been awful, man. So he gets in there, gets all the draft capital with the AD trade, gets all the draft capital with the Drew Holiday trade, hires Stan Van Gundy. He's out in a year. There's just tons of signs. JJ Redick, makes some promises to him about, hey, I'll get you closer to New York, Brooklyn if we got a deal somewhere. Dumps into Dallas, and he's just trashing him. It has not been a good run for Griffin there. But atop that list is hiring Stan Van Gundy again. I hate the recycling of coaches. Let's give some new people some thoughts. Terry Stotts, I feel is going to be the head coach, potentially the Boston Celtics or probably the Indiana Pacers. I feel like the tea leaves are burning that way towards the Indiana Pacers. So he's the Portland Trailblazers coach. Obviously, they've struggled a lot with defense, those kinds of things. Becky Hammon, I feel, is honestly in the driver's seat for the Portland job. Obviously, they have tons of need there. Martin, what do you see with some of these vacancies? Are there any surprises on guys that didn't last long? Potential replacements, places. I mean, it feels like we've got a lot at some big spots right now.
Yeah, so I don't think you said this one because you did say that Terry would be going to Indiana, because I agree with what you said a week ago. because we didn't talk about Rick Carlisle, who got fired, because I think you're right, he's going to be the coach of Boston.
Oh, yeah, great one. That could be, yeah, former Pacer coach.
Yeah, you called that in our messages and you just didn't say it here because obviously, apparently, there was a rift between him and Luka, but you know how that goes in the NBA.
I could see Carlisle for sure is an option in
going to Boston.
Boston. I think in Boston, yeah.
Right.
The other name I forgot to mention was 70-some-year-old Mike D'Antoni, also a finalist in Portland. He'll interview second time again early next week. I mean, obviously, wealth of experience with the Phoenix Suns that we're talking about with Steve Nash. I mean, he started all this kind of small ball stuff with Sean Marion and Amar Stoudemire and Steve Nash, you name it. A guy with James Harden and Houston. I mean, that's, again, if you're Portland, you got to figure out, am I bringing in a 70-year-old guy or am I kind of making a splash with Becky and that defensive-minded, culture-minded Spurs mentality? I'd probably lean that way as opposed to bringing him in. But, I mean, there's some huge openings here.
Honestly, I mean, with Mike and the offense, since we're talking about what he did for Nash and obviously what he did for Harden, I could see D'Antoni going to Dallas. I really could. I could see them pairing up D'Antoni with Luka. And Becky and Chauncey, which I do like both of them. I do feel like Becky is in the driver's seat right now. I just would pray that if she does get the job, she actually has time in the job. I hope it's not a 1 year they don't do so well and then the next year she's gone. I hope she'll get at least 2-3 years to prove herself before getting potentially fired or getting an extension. But yeah, man, these things came out of nowhere and I don't think we're done yet. I think there'll be a couple more potentially, especially going into the off season when we start talking about players on the move. But some big spots. I mean, I feel like Boston and Dallas and Portland with their star players are the hottest destinations. So we'll see. We will. And Jason Kidd, I mean, there is Jason Kidd who could potentially get the Dallas job too with Luka if he wants to leave.
We did talk about that. That could be a good Dallas pick right there. Ime Udoka is another name to watch on. So Ime Udoka, former player, he is a Nets assistant. He's kind of come out as a potential to be with Boston this week. I think Chauncey's been linked to Boston as well a little bit. Another Eastern Conference Central Division longtime player with the Pistons there. Kind of knows the grind of the Central Division. But Martin, again, at top of the hour, we're going to know our NBA draft ping pong ball bouncing scenarios. Thoughts on just in general on the prospects, on some of the teams with the lottery order here and the revamped lottery odds, all those types of things.
Well, I think you alluded that it's pretty 99.98% sure that whoever gets the number one pick is going to take Cade. So with those type of drafts, I think the draft starts at number 2. I mean, obviously we've talked about Jalen Green, but also I would say there is another Jalen in the draft, Jalen Suggs, who is a good player as well. But I mean, I feel like it's going to be those players that out of Jalen Suggs, Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, like outside of them, who is going to be that pick in like a couple years where we're like, oh, they should have been picked in the top 5. Like that's who I kind of look for in these drafts. And I mean, the only thing I'm praying for is that Golden State doesn't get the number 1 pick. That's it.
There's the potential there with that Minnesota pick. So your top, the way they redid the odds, the top 3 teams have a 14% chance of the number 1 pick, and that would be the Houston Rockets, the Detroit Pistons, or the Orlando Magic. Next would be the 4th best odds by a coin toss, because Cleveland was tied with Oklahoma City, and of course, Cavs nature, we lost. Oklahoma City would be next, 11.5. Cavs can have anywhere from the 6th or the 8th at 8.6. I think I saw on Twitter, I've not verified that There was a high probability, in the last 8 drafts, the Cavs have moved backwards in lottery odds 6 of the 8 times. So, I know everybody has that, 10 years ago kind of bias in their mind of Bill Simmons throwing his hands in his face and, they won the number 1 pick again for the second time in 3 years. All those things, like 6 out of the last 8 drafts, we've gone the opposite direction. So as I'm looking at the spread here, like Cleveland's got a 25% chance to get the 7th pick. Like I'm going to be like rolling. I'm just like, I can just see it now. Like, I don't have a lot of high hopes, and that's just me as a person, like working in public relations for the day gig. Like I got to think worst case scenario, which is, when you do get surprised from time to time, then you're like, okay, I'm surprised. Because if you go in with the mentality thinking the worst, you open up to being surprised. But yeah, there's tons of different ways this can go. Again, that Minnesota pick, there's a 9% chance he could go number 1. And of course, that has to be conveyed to Golden State as a part of the trade for our former Buckeye friend there to get him to Minnesota. So, Toronto's in contention. Like I wish I had a better frame of reference for like when they start doing the play-by-play, like announcing of like, they'll say like Sacramento's number 10. That means such and such has jumped in the top 3. Like, I wish I knew that now, like what the scenarios were is if team X is in the 9 spot, this is what that does. Like, some reporter help me out somewhere. Someone needs to go through and do that. But in terms of prospects, I really feel like this is a deep draft. The only guy that everybody's super high on that I just don't, I'm not confident in, but these guys are 19 years old. They can change so much in 4 years in the association. I'm not really high on Evan Mobley. I feel like I watched a lot of Evan play, and to me, he kind of seemed, all these dudes are super raw, but he obviously the length's there, the athleticism's there. At times, like I thought his brother drowned him out at USC. I feel like that's a kid that dominated a lot because of length and size, maybe as opposed to, ability and those kinds of things. But again, hopefully I'm wrong, but I think Cade Cunningham is the top of the draft. I think Jalen Suggs and Jalen Green, those are 2 phenomenal guys. Jalen Green, really, really great year with the Ignite team. He's super, super raw, but I really love me some Jonathan Kuminga. Like if the Cavs are sitting there at 5 and he does fall to 5, I will be happy with that. Again, that's a project guy. And there's other folks to come along. Keon Johnson, brother Davian Mitchell of Donovan Mitchell. Great season at Baylor. Franz Wagner. Yeah, you name it. Kai Jones. Then you start getting into guys like, another guy that our buddy Jeremy Young's been on me a lot about just in terms of length and everything else. Another Florida State wing prospect name to watch out for. I've done a lot of homework. Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes is really good, really good defender. Shot needs to develop a little bit, but that's a guy who might jump a little bit, surprise some folks next year. So we'll have a little bit clearer picture here in the next hour. Martin, if you don't hear me for good or for worse, it's probably because I'm passed out on the floor somewhere, buddy. But I'm optimistic. After another bad Cavs season, we need some help. We need some draft capital to swing a deal if they're maybe try to get better faster. But who knows? We'll know more soon.
Amen. And I'll be actually up in about 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Evan, anything else you want to say before we sign off here today?
That's all I got. A lot of basketball to digest, high quality. Final 4 teams left, basketball and picks, and then the beauty of the offseason and trades and everything else. We missed Kemba Walker's now an Oklahoma City Thunder member. So Al Horford's back in Boston where he realized he should never have left. Mm-hmm. He played some of his best basketball of his career there, and that's really going to help Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with those high screens and just on the back end of their defensive rotation. They struggled with Tristan Thompson. They struggled with Daniel Tice to try to find a solid back end of their defensive rotation and a great solid screen setter. Since Al Horford left, signed that big deal with the Sixers, and Daryl Morey got creative with the books and got him off that contract, and he's been buried in a hole in Oklahoma City for most of last year. I like that. Obviously, the Kemba signing did not work out, and that's ultimately why, Danny Ainge, part of why Danny Ainge had to step aside was, you essentially, you let Gordon Hayward walk and you signed Kemba when Kyrie didn't last, and you got rid of that Brooklyn pick, ended up being Colin Sexton. Who would have, everybody, all things being equal, would have taken Kyrie Irving? Absolutely, that trade 11 times out of 10. But unfortunately, when the ball bounces the wrong way, luck-wise, sometimes there's got to be blame, and that was Danny for there. But Kemba's now with Shai Gilgeous in Oklahoma City for as long as that lasts, with 74 draft picks or whatever it is. But we'll see, Martin. We'll see.
We'll see. Last things I really have, obviously, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to like, rate, comment, subscribe. With these Final Four, I am actually really loving the Final Four right now at the NBA playoffs because we got new young faces in there. One of these guys is going to be an NBA champion, from Trae Young to Giannis to CP3 and Devin Booker to Kawhi and Paul George. So we're going to have
it's exciting.
It's very exciting, and it's very good for our league because people are going to have to realize that the people that, LeBron and them are not going to be around forever. So to get to see the new guard take center stage is really nice for me, and I can't wait to see what happens. And I'm really hoping for that Milwaukee Phoenix finals. I feel like that one would be very entertaining. But with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Make sure you watch the lottery stuff today at 8:30, and then Clippers and Suns right after at 9, and then we'll be back when the conference finals are done, and we'll be previewing the finals and talking about who's going to get the number one pick then, which is crazy. We're at this point of the year already. That is crazy. Evan has his fingers crossed for the Cavs. Obviously, you guys can't see it, but I can. But thank you all for listening to the L7C podcast. You guys take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.